We welcome Julian Council now to the Locked On Hornets podcast. You can find him on Locked On Panthers, where, he still has to talk about that team that only finished with 5 wins for the second straight year under Matt Rule, who everybody hates and is public enemy number 1 in the city of Charlotte right now. It's brutal, and he's not doing himself any favors by continuing to talk, whether it be on a radio show or whether it be on press conferences. Julian, it's awful over there in Pantherland.
So this is where I stand when it comes to Matt Rule and his issues when it comes to speaking to the media.
Just fire off your Matt Rule takes. That's what
I quite honestly do not care what he or any coach of any sport has to say about anything. All they care about is what they do. And that's kind of how I care about what people say. Same thing about relationships in life. Like, you can say whatever you want, but I really care about your actions more so than the things that you say. They actually speak louder than words. So people can be mad about how poor Matt Rule is at getting his messaging across, and some of the things he says are pretty dumb and asinine. But it doesn't really matter. If he was winning, people wouldn't care as much as they care right now. And people, also Panther fans, just looking for a reason to be upset instead of enjoying the other team in town that's having a ton of success and just finally beat Philadelphia and has beat the Milwaukee twice the past week. I don't understand why people are focusing so much attention on the losing team in town and what the head coach has to say on a radio show.
Why are you listening to my podcast? Don't do that. Listen to Locked On Hornets.
and the head coach of the Charlotte Hornets, JB, he's the king of not saying anything in a post-game press conference.
Correct.
Like, he just keeps it really steady as she goes. So, but his actions are speaking right now. Julian, what do you think about that? Not only the win against Philadelphia, but what you're seeing out of this team over the past 3 games, knocking down the Milwaukee Bucks as well.
I don't think there's ever been a point in the last 10, 15 years where I've been this excited about the Charlotte Hornets and where they've had a stretch like that. Like, can you pinpoint to back when they were the original Hornets towards the end of the time they were here, 01-02, to when they came back, the Bobcats, even the Larry Brown season when there was the most anticipated season of Charlotte Bobcats basketball, to after 15-16. Have you, even that 15-16 season, can you pinpoint to a point in time where they go out there and they beat the defending world champions in back-to-back games, then turn around and beat a Philadelphia 76ers team, albeit shorthanded, I guess, still with the Ben Simmons issue, but a very good Sixers team that they have not been able to beat since Nick Batum guaranteed victory against that trash 76ers team back in 17, and then got clowned by TJ McConnell after the game. It's awesome to see. Like, there's the momentum that they have, and the amount of home games they have in the second half of the season. I feel great about this team. I don't think I've ever felt like this about the Charlotte Hornets and what they could achieve this season, especially after what they've done over the last 5 days.
It's a perfect mixture of hope and results right here, right now, because when you talk about that 15-16 team, it was awesome to get to the postseason. We all loved Courtney Lee for hitting the shot despite his only half-season rental, because he was a part of something special here in Charlotte, at least up to Charlotte Hornets standards, just getting to a playoff series and competing for 7 games. But the thing is, you never knew what the future looked like with that Charlotte Hornets team. Like, maybe you still believed in MKG to come back and be stronger. Maybe you believed Nick Batum could be something more than what he was, because we didn't feel like Nick Batum was going to be awful at that time. Kemba, like, here you have LaMelo, who is clearly in tier 1 of the best young NBA players in the game. You have Miles Bridges, who's at least in the top 10 vote getters for the front court in the Eastern Conference. You have Gordon Hayward giving you 30, even though he's been inconsistent, right? Like, there is a perfect mixture of being above 500, looking like a team that could be a problem in the postseason, depending on seeding, and also having a decent amount of hope for the future. And it seems like there are different avenues you can take. Like, you can take the exit of in-season trade, and you feel good about it. You can roll with this squad right now based on the way they're playing defense, and it might be a little dicey. They could revert back to their old ways, but you could feel pretty good about it. Like, they have options. They have hope. They have results. And I think that's the reason why, Julian, like, I feel better about this team more than I have really since the Diddy, Mashburn, David Wesley era as well.
Yeah, and I look at that season too, and it kind of just came out of nowhere. Like, they got really hot in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
They make that Courtney Lee trade. I thought that Jeremy Lin was awesome that year too for them as that second point guard. Frank Kaminsky, even in his rookie year, especially later on in the season when he was starting the playoffs, he was giving you a lot of good minutes, but it wasn't really one of those things where they had built towards that. Where you look at what's going on right now, getting lucky in the lottery with LaMelo, him being the rookie of the year last year, now building off of that past season, the development of Miles Bridges, what you're getting off of the bench from PJ Washington, and also Kelly Oubre, who's been one of the best free agency signings in the NBA so far this season. It's something that they built towards, and now you're getting to see the benefit of the decision to let Kemba Walker go, even how messy it was, and having the commitment to the G League in the draft and development that they have here in Charlotte. And it all goes to the top with Mitch Kupchak and in the identity of the team that James Borrego's wanted to see. And it's now all coming to fruition as they're beating two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference in the past 3 games. And that has me excited and should have everyone in the city and across the world as a Hornets fan excited about the potential of this season. Now, I'm not really on board with them making a trade right now because I'm pretty happy with what they have. And I don't really know what the ceiling really is, like NBA finals or even conference finals. But we see a year ago, Atlanta, they got hot with a young team, made it all the way to the conference finals. Like, who could say that Charlotte Hornets has their current iteration right now couldn't do the same thing?
I would say, I mean, I'm still not on board with the idea that the Hornets can win a playoff series. I mean, I'm getting there, and if they continue this hot streak and continue to beat really good teams all the way to the playoffs, then maybe they can convince me. That's still available. But at this point, I'm still thinking at a 7-game series versus a Philadelphia or a Milwaukee, they're going to find a way to beat a Hornets team that has such a gaping hole in the middle of the floor, because really the Hornets are still, I think, 1 or 2 injuries away from just completely collapsing defensively. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up their health. COVID protocols, if you want to include that, then the Hornets was really the first team that it hit harder than everybody else. But if we're going to talk about relative health as far as any long-term injuries, they've actually skated by on that. Gordon Hayward. I mean, look at the minutes he's played this season. Among the leaders on this team, maybe he's playing the most minutes on this team, if I'm not mistaken. But the fact that he's appeared in as many games as he has already, that's astounding, given his injury history. LaMelo Ball hasn't suffered anything too heartbreaking yet. All of this, by the way, we're knocking on wood to try to get rid of that juju.
I'm literally banging on my table.
I'm only saying this based off observation. I'm not projecting. Karma gods, get away from me. I'm just saying what's happened so far. But we have dodged pretty serious injuries here in Charlotte, and that's something to take note of when trying to project where this team could be. The good news is I do think they have some depth. Like, COVID protocols, those guys were still out, whether it was a long-term injury or not. They were still out, and we had to get a taste of what this team would look like with a Book Knight getting some minutes here and there. A JT Thor, remember that stretch? like JT Thor provided some good minutes. There is some kind of stability that this team has if you have an injury, maybe, because of what we've seen so far. And I think that allows you to feel somewhat comfortable with it.
And that's also a week-long period where we've had to see some of the Hornets shorthanded and still have success. So what does it look like if they have a month and a half with a key player out like last season? Because that's really what derailed them at the end of the year. I know all they needed was 1 win in those final 7 games to be able to host a home game in the play-in tournament. But it was still a young team that was still learning and growing. And I guess Doug makes a good point, too. Like, yeah, I mean, over a 7-game series, are you taking the Hornets or Philadelphia? Probably Philadelphia, because they have that one player in the court who Charlotte really has nothing they can do about for 7 games, unless Embiid, who historically has injuries, gets injured. Like, that's the only way I could see that scenario playing out right now. But just the way that they're playing, and hopefully they can position themselves where the matchup that they get is not against a Joel Embiid, against a Giannis Antetokounmpo, who they have no answer for over a 7-game period. But right now, I just feel good about the foundation of this team. And it is also one of those things where, like, yeah, they got mopped in the play-in tournament. You got to learn how to play in the playoffs. And a lot of that comes through experience. But again, Atlanta didn't have a ton of experience last year either. They do have Capella, so that definitely helps them in terms of defensively in the middle. And the Hornets aren't a great defensive team or rebounding team. I'm just kind of on the wave of just like, hey, we just beat Philadelphia after 16 straight losses, and then Milwaukee. Like, I feel pretty damn good about what these guys can do. And the last thing I'm going to do is doubt them, because they've given me no reason to doubt them over the last couple of seasons, at least this season and the last season.
Well, I think Atlanta is a good comparison, because they not only had Capella, they had Trae Young, who is a player that offensively is just really tough, or defensively for the opposing team is really tough to scheme against. The Hornets have had that player, but it's been different players on different nights. They've had it. Sometimes it's Gordon Hayward. Sometimes it's Miles Bridges who's scoring 30+. Sometimes it's Terry Rozier who's coming through with big buckets. LaMelo's had a few 30-point games, but offensively, we just haven't seen like him ascend to that sort of take over kind of mentality where, all right, I'm gonna win this game for us offensively. So, does a player like that emerge for the Charlotte Hornets in the second half of the season? I think that's an interesting storyline to watch as well.
Well, and we'll go to kind of talking about the rebuild overall too, because I want to discuss a little more about that. How are the Hornets here? But even speaking with LaMelo, I mentioned it a couple of times. It's why I was so excited watching LaMelo play against Milwaukee, because there were takeover moments for him. You did have the moments where he's taking guys off of the dribble. I'm going to get a basket. There's nothing you can do to stop me, and that's how you get, I think it was 16 points in the third quarter. Still coming up with big buckets in the fourth, and then even in the first game against Milwaukee, you got to see that. And the difference is LaMelo has guys that he can facilitate to that can score pretty easily. With Atlanta, Trae Young is asked to do a lot of the scoring. John Collins isn't necessarily happy about it, but Trae Young is the guy that's asked to do a lot of that. Here, you don't have to force it. Terry can come do that, as you mentioned, Doug, all the guys you just listed. So we'll see what exactly LaMelo's role is as far as the scoring kind of goes down the line. But right now, exactly what I said in the first segment, guys are buying into their roles, and they're playing really well within their designed role, and I think that is allowing this team to really benefit from it. Let's talk about the rebuild with the Charlotte Hornets team and kind of look ahead still in the next segment. Not before I discuss Bet Online. They'd like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue the march to the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online remains the #1 spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and a mobile website to sign up today, and you can receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code Locked On to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and the easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. How did the Hornets get here? Is it a rebuild that we need to attribute all of the success and thank Mitch Kupchak for? We'll talk about that next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.